Janelle, is the new Title IX coordinator on the call yet? No?
I
Okay.
can see her.
Okay, we'll wait for her to join too. She got the link, right?
Yeah, I sent her the link. I'm hoping she'll join us. There's a chance she's not, I suppose.
Okay, gotcha. We'll give it a couple more minutes then.
Caitlin, is anyone joined by phone? LaShawn says she's on the phone with us.
I actually don't see anybody on here by phone, no.
LaShawn, are you able to say something? Okay, I'll email her back and see where that gets us.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, no, I don't have anyone, and I haven't gotten any like requests to join by phone or anything like that. Is she available to join by like through her computer? If not, like if she can't make it, that's okay, I guess. Yeah.
She's emailing me right now, so I'm not sure what's going on.
Okay, gotcha.
She's available.
Okay. Natalie, your dog is super cute.
Thank you. If, like I said, if my kids come home like right as I'm talking, you're gonna hear a lot of her. So
that's okay, no worries.
lots of yelling and general chaos.
I'm kind of missing. Your puppy was in the background last time, kind of hanging out.
Oh,
I got a little distracted. Like, where is the puppy?
Yeah, he's sleeping in the crate right now. But yeah, it's been an interesting like disclaimer with my clients because I need them to know, like, if you hear a noise or you see something moving, it's not another person, it's a dog. And then that usually leads to, can I see your puppy? Which, so it's been fun new.
When I was working on my dissertation, my dogs were, when I would shut the computer off, the noise it would make, they would know I was done and they'd come running in. I was like, that is the saddest thing. Like the computer shutting off is like, okay, now it's time to play. Oh my gosh.
Like Pavlov's Dell instead of Pavlov's Bell.
Well, that was a good one.
That's a psych dad joke. That was a combination, Ryan. I see you shaking your head of psych and dad just mashing together perfectly.
I feel like my cat is the opposite, where as soon as she hears me like typing, that's when she wants to come in the room. Like as soon as she knows I'm busy, that's when she's like, oh, let's play. Otherwise, she doesn't care about me at all. So yeah, I don't know how to train it. If you have tips.
Well, that's the cat in my world. The cat likes to be on the computer when you're trying to use it. The dogs, realize later that it's time.
I guess sorry, what was the new Title IX coordinator's name really quick?
LaShawn.
LaShawn, okay, yeah, I guess if she can join like a little bit later, like that's fine if she can't join right now. But for right now, hello everybody. I guess like a formal welcome and introduction to what we're gonna be doing today. This is a follow-up town hall to our original town hall on Title IX regulations and some of the changes that the university had to undergo because of new federal regulations. So those new regulations on our campus have been finalized, and this is an opportunity for Janelle Ramsel, our current Title IX coordinator, to talk about them with you guys. And we also have our current SAAFE coordinator, Natalie Muskin-Press, here to introduce herself to you guys and talk a little bit about the SAAFE office. Does anybody have any questions before we get started? All right, awesome. Natalie, could you introduce yourself for us?
Sure. I'm like I said, I'm under a time limit here, so I'm going to talk fast. But I'm Natalie Muskin-Press. I'm the assistant director of the SAAFE and OADE office at Counseling Services. I've been here for 10 years in the Office of Alcohol and Drug Education, and so now I'm also taking on the SAAFE office. So I am the victim's advocate for any student who may need that service, and then I'm also the person to contact if you're looking to explore different ways we can promote prevention, intervention, bystander intervention, campus culture change, any of those things, whether it's a student group who's looking to get involved, whether you personally have an idea you'd like to see get off the ground. I'll be providing some things that I generate on my own, but I'm also here just as a resource for students who would like to create their own things on campus as well, because you guys are on the ground. You guys can create the culture change much more than I can. And so ideas about what you think the campus needs, please come to my office. Please let me know and we can work together, whether it be within your organization or just campus as a whole. So, does anybody have any questions for me? My office can be contacted at SAAFE, SAAFE.office@valpo.edu, or you can call at 219-464-6820. Those are the two best ways to reach me. And I am one of the confidential resources on campus. So while I do work closely with Title IX and with VUPD, I am a place where if someone is not sure if they want to report yet, I am the place where they can come first to kind of explore their options in a confidential way before they move forward.
Natalie, could you put that in the chat just in case people want it for later? The
numbers?
Yeah.
Or just everything?
No, just the numbers and the email.
I will do that. So those of you who are in the chat, I don't know if the new chat will it will show up if people join in late, but you can see it and share it too. All right. Thank you guys so much for having me. Enjoy your time with Janelle. She's great. So, all right, bye.
Awesome. Thanks, Natalie.
Yep.
Caitlin, I don't think there's a waiting room. Is there a waiting room?
No, not for Google Meets.
Okay.
That I know of.
So I'll just introduce myself. I'm Janelle Ramsel. I'm the current Title IX coordinator and assistant general counsel. My last day is September 11th, and at that time, and actually overlapping with me starting September 8th, the next Title IX coordinator is going to overlap with me so that there's time for her to train up. I'm not sure. She said she's in the waiting room and it keeps timing out, so that doesn't mean anything to me for Google Meets. It sounds like a Zoom thing. So I'm not sure what's going on, but hopefully she'll pop on, or she might watch this recording later. I'm not sure. But her name is LaShawn McGee, and she is a Title IX consultant. Because of COVID, I'll be honest with you, just to set expectations, the scope of her work here is going to be limited. It's not going to be the same as what I do, and that's intentional. That's not because of her not doing her job or anything like that. That's because that's what the university has set as priorities during this COVID time. It's a hard time to recruit people and bring in people for new positions. So we're going to wait until we're hopefully past COVID a little bit further, thinking around January to do a full search to replace this position in full. In the interim, LaShawn is a very capable person, and she will be fulfilling this role as well as the discrimination complaint coordinator role, taking in complaints, responding to those in a timely fashion, and coordinating any kind of hearings along with Dean of Students or Human Resources, depending on who is involved. So again, it's going to be a different scope, but she's going to be a great resource, although it will look a little bit different than what it has looked like working with me. Hopefully things will get back to a new normal starting around January. So if you're not familiar with me, or if this is the first meeting you are sitting in on with me, the purpose for this meeting, not only to connect you to different resources around campus, but also to talk about the difference in Title IX regulations. Before I get into deep, I see both Julie and Ryan are on the line. So do you want an opportunity to introduce yourselves or say why you're here? Julie says, absolutely not.
We're just advisors to Senate, so you just go.
Okay, great. So back, Ryan's also saying, no, thank you. So back, I think it was a year ago, the federal government said that they were going to change some of our Title IX regulations. That finally happened, and our implementation day was August 14th. So as we were preparing for that, once the rules were finalized, I set a number of meetings across campus with faculty, staff, and students through Caitlin setting this up, and also with the Title IX working group to get feedback on different changes that were within our purview that we sometimes had to make, sometimes didn't have to make, and sought feedback on what changes students, faculty, and staff believed were in the best interest of the institution. Then I took all of that feedback and I updated our policy, and I ran that policy by PC for additional feedback, and it was approved and implemented. So there were some things that were out of agreement. Not everyone agreed on the exact same things. There were things where leadership thought certain choices were in the best interest and students or faculty thought something else was in the best interest. So in those cases, we'll talk through those on a case-by-case basis of what the outcome was. So I'm going to, oh, sorry, when I say PC, I mean President's Council. Thank you, Julie. I'm going to present my screen to show some of these decision points I'm referencing. And we'll talk through them from there. So this is as big as I can possibly get it. Is it visible? Okay. So as we were talking through, these are the different groups that I met with to get feedback. I don't want you to think that I went in a vacuum and made all these decisions. I talked to quite a few people. So first, this policy and decision points were run by Title IX Working Group. So on the working group is Julie. Deandra is from HR, Human Resources. Chuck Garber is VUPD. Stuart Cooper is from counseling. So he was serving as the SAAFE advocate, the victim advocate this summer. Amy Atchinson and Tom Goyne are professors, faculty. Eric Maturia is a staff member. Kelly Eschenauer leads the Student Health Center. And we did have a student forum, which several members of the Title IX working group decided to participate there instead of in the working group forum. So that was one group I checked in with. There was also a leadership group, and these are people who work on this policy day in and day out. So I checked with them to make sure I wasn't missing any procedural details of things that would work and would not work. So Darren Farha is general counsel. Julie DeGraw, of course, is on this call and is Dean of Students and Vice President for Student Life. Tim Jenkins was the previous Dean of Students and Dean of Students at the time. Stacy Miller is the Assistant Vice Provost for Inclusion. Beth Scaglione Sewell is our Campus Judicial Board Chair, so she sits in on all of the hearings for Title IX. Scott Harrison and Deandra DeWitt are both in Human Resources. So these are people who at the administrative level are doing work on these policies, so they also had a voice. Faculty forum, this was an open forum for any faculty that were interested, so every faculty member who had an interest could either attend the live session or the recording. And the student forum, organized by Caitlin, Jolie, and Sophia, it had an outstanding response. It had over 270 responses, and that was also recorded and made available. So if students wanted to engage with this, they had that opportunity as well. So it was pretty varied and wide feedback, and all of that went into making these decisions. So if you recall, or if you chose to attend that first session, the very first decision that had to be made was how we were going to treat the policies. Title IX, again, is a federal law that says you can't discriminate on the basis of sex. Over time, this has been interpreted to mean that you can't have sexual harassment or discrimination based on sex or gender identity. So those definitions have been evolving over time. And before these regulation changes, we had our Title IX policies, discrimination based on sex, and our discrimination policies, discrimination based on other characteristics like race, national origin, ethnicity, religion, as a single policy. But the Title IX regulations required us to raise the standards really high for anything that involves Title IX sexual harassment. So what that meant is we had a choice. Do we want to keep this discrimination and sexual harassment policy together, or do we want to split it? So the very first conversation we had, everyone was in agreement, although the agreement was stronger in some places than other, that we should split these policies and have our Title IX policies as a single policy and have the discrimination policy split off. I know it's tempting to think, once you hear about some of the changes for Title IX, that splitting these policies might be showing that we are devaluing discrimination, but that's not the case at all. In fact, it's the opposite. Unfortunately, we believe as a university that some of the Title IX changes are so legalistic that they might keep some people from going forward with their Title IX cases. So we wanted to keep the standards of going forward with a case a little bit lower so that there were not additional barriers to filing a complaint or to seeking services. I still don't personally believe there's any barriers to seeking services. Going forward with a hearing might be more difficult, but there's a lot of structure in place to assist any student who wants to go forward with a case. So circling back to this idea, this was split into two policies, and sexual harassment is going to be its own policy, and discrimination based on categories other than gender or sexual identity are going to be a different policy. So there was vast agreement. You can see here, WG is working group, LG is leadership group, F is faculty, S is students. So overall, there was agreement that these should be split into two policies across all of these groups I checked in with. The next thing that was up for discussion was who can impute actual notice. What this means is there is a group of employees who are required to share if they hear allegations of sexual misconduct or discrimination, they are required to share those allegations with me as the Title IX coordinator and discrimination complaint coordinator. So there was discussion of whether that is the best option. Is that what students actually want? Is that what faculty or staff actually want? And why do students tell faculty or staff when they have an issue? So based on this feedback, the majority of people, again, were in agreement that we should keep this list of people the same. Specifically, there were concerns from faculty that faculty should not have to report because some of them, a subsection of that group, believed students would report to faculty because students have a special relationship with faculty and don't necessarily want it reported to me, but just want that faculty member to help. The discussion we had in the forums, as well as the feedback from the student survey, showed otherwise. Students were clear, although 61%, so it's not a strong majority, but it is a majority, showed that they were speaking to faculty in order to make forward motion on their complaint, not because they wanted that faculty member to keep it private. That does not mean that every student feels that way. But in this case, we felt that this was a good way forward because there was relative agreement across all of these bodies that have a lot of say in this. So in the way we interpreted that, I want to draw special attention to a follow-up question that was asked on the survey. 23% answered the reason that they connect with a faculty member is a private conversation with someone I trust, expecting no other outcome. 10% said other, including comments such as, I want this to be reported forward and I want a private conversation. Almost 2% saying, I want the police to be notified, and 1% saying, I just want the resources. I don't necessarily want anyone else to know about it. So overall, it was a clear message from students that they're not reporting to faculty just to connect to faculty. The next decision we had to make was whether we wanted to continue to address incidences of sexual misconduct that occur off campus. So right now, or I shouldn't say right now, under the previous policy, we had to address things that happened off campus if they had on-campus effects. So for example, if two students live together off campus and they're not in campus housing, and there is domestic violence between them, the university would investigate and would possibly punish, if anyone was found responsible, students engaged in that conduct, even though it didn't happen on campus or in a university program or activity, because they're both attending school together and they're both students. So under the new Title IX regulations, it's no longer considered a Title IX issue if something happens off campus. This means not only are things that happen in non-student housing not considered a Title IX issue, but also things that happen in study abroad are no longer considered a Title IX issue. So we had the option to no longer address these issues, but as across conversations, there was very strong agreement with almost everyone except for faculty that we need to continue to address these instances. So it won't be considered Title IX for federal reasons, but it will be under the Title IX policy. It will be under that sexual misconduct harassment policy. So you as a student will not notice a difference. It's going to be contiguous with what it was before the changes. We also had the ability to decide whether we wanted to retroactively apply policies or whether we would apply a policy based on the date the complaint was made. So what that means is if a report comes in today about behavior that occurred last year, would we use last year's policy because last year a different policy was in place, or would we use today's policy because the report was made today? This one did not have great agreement across different groups, and the faculty survey did not address this question. But what was ultimately decided is that the policy that stands today is the policy that we're going to use for complaints. This is because that's consistent with the Dean of Students policy and how they enact their campus judicial board. And we felt that it was a very good idea to be consistent with that, especially because part of our Title IX policy is implemented under the campus judicial board process. So basically what that means is if we get a complaint today, we were using today's policy. Hopefully that's not too different, or I'm sure that's what most students would expect, but that was a discussion point, so I wanted to talk through that. The next decision point we had was about interim suspensions. The new regulations make a clear call out that we are able to provide interim suspensions for anyone who is a threat to campus before we have a judicial process or judicial hearing for them on their charges. We had this in practice, but it's a very good thing, in my opinion, to get this formally sanctioned by the federal government in their regulations, and also to clarify our own written policy and what policy we're going under to take that action. So what that means is And there was agreement at the time that there should be some sort of written policy that people can reference, but we didn't come up with any specifics of what that should look like. Just wanted to make sure we had a formal written policy on that. So what we did there is the Dean of Students office created a policy that is incorporated into the student handbook, and the Title IX policy references to it. So what this means is essentially if there is a perceived danger to campus, in either my opinion as Title IX coordinator or Dean of Students opinion, or anyone who has firsthand knowledge of any alleged incidences, perhaps police, they can work with the Dean of Students office to place an interim suspension to remove a dangerous person from campus before a Title IX hearing takes place. The next decision point was whether we wanted to stick with the preponderance of the evidence standard or switch to the clear and convincing standard. Clear and convincing is about 75%. That is the standard that was in place in before 2011. So this is a historical standard. And preponderance of the evidence is what has been in place since 2011. And that is about 50% plus a feather. So this is a lower threshold of what is going to be what information you need to make a finding. There was very strong agreement that we should, well, I shouldn't say there's strong agreement. There was a little bit of disagreement on what standard to use, but overall we decided to stick with preponderance of the evidence. So students slightly came in for preponderance of the evidence, and faculty slightly came in for preponderance of the evidence as well. The working group and leadership group were more clear that they wanted the preponderance of the evidence standard to stay. We also discussed reasonably prompt timeframes for response. So under the new regulations, we have the ability to remove any reference to a specific number of days and instead say reasonably prompt. In fact, these are going to be interpreted relatively similarly because we can give ourselves common sense extensions for investigation or for hearings. So for example, if two parties want to extend the investigation period because they are on winter break and don't want to be thinking about this until they're back, that's fine. We can extend that as long as there's no concerns over that extension. So even if it says 60 days, that doesn't necessarily mean it'll be a hard 60 days. But students felt a little bit more comfortable with the firmer deadline. And so we did keep the 60-day limit. And the next big change in the Title IX regulations was the role of advisors in a hearing. So in Title IX hearings, going forward, individuals, the complainant, the person bringing forward their claim, and the respondent, the person being accused of something, will have to have an advisor. It's no longer only if they want them, they have to have them. And that's in the regulations, that's not Valpo. And as a part of that, the advisors have to do cross-examination. So that means the complainant and the respondent will not be speaking directly to each other at any time. And also the complainant and respondent will not be speaking to someone else's witness. They can speak to their own witness in questioning, but they can't speak to the other person's witness. So how that plays out is in a hearing, typically one party shares their evidence of events, and then there's an opportunity to ask questions of the person who just shared their version of events. That portion, asking questions to the other party, is called cross-examination. Parties will not be able to do their own cross-examination anymore. That will have to happen through advisors. People can choose any advisor they want. We're not going to require people to use our advisors. I saw a great question. There's no requirements for who an advisor is. So it could be a family member, it could be a friend, it could be a teacher. The advisors that Valpo will provide, if someone does not select an advisor or if someone chooses to work with them, are our discrimination complaint advisors. These are individuals who are specifically trained in our discrimination and Title IX processes and how to serve as an advocate, including cross-examination. So if you don't want to have an advisor or you don't know who to ask, you can choose one of those discrimination complaint advisors. And the list of people who serve in that role is on the Title IX website, valpo.edu/Title IX. I bet Julie will type that for us if I give her more than 1 second. Thank you, Julie. So those discrimination complaint advisors are listed there. They have to complete cross-examination, and the question was raised to this group and others of whether they should do more than just cross-examination. Students felt that the advisor should be able to do more than just cross-examination. Students felt that the advisors should be able to do whatever the student asked them to do, if that includes asking questions or speaking on their behalf throughout. Students wanted them to have that right. Unfortunately, leadership did not agree with that, and overall, we did not end up adopting that. So cross-examinations are limited to advisors only, and other than that, advisors can speak with the person they're working with throughout, but they can't speak to the hearing panel. They can't ask questions outside of cross-examination or things like that. So the reasoning for that decision was that there have been too many bad experiences in leadership's mind of advisors, especially attorneys serving as advisors, taking over the process and making it even more legalistic. And they felt that that would be a huge barrier to students' participation or to faculty and staff members' willingness to sit on these panels and serve as the judicial board because of how legalistic the role of these advisors could make that feel. So the role of advisors is going to be limited only to cross-examination. They will do cross-examination, but they will not be able to do anything else. To clarify, is the complainant able, oh, sorry, it just went away. Let me pull up the chat again. To clarify, is the complainant able to answer or ask questions during cross-examination? The complainant will not be able to ask questions. They can ask them through their advisor only, but they cannot ask them themselves. The complainant will have to answer questions on his or her own. So anytime a question is asked, advisors cannot answer those, but the advisors must ask cross-examination questions. So that is the end of my rule change highlighted ones. I want to go forward with some summaries of other changes I made. So let me pull up that document. I just want to double check you can still see a document. Yes? No? Okay, let me represent this and make sure I didn't just choose one screen. Okay.
You're good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So this is a summary of other changes that were made. This summary is different than the previous one because these ones were not up for discussion because it captures things I had to do based on the law that weren't decision points brought to anyone else. So as a reminder and summary, we split this into two policies: the non-discrimination policy, which covers race, color, age, disability, veteran status, religion, national and ethnic origin, and genetic information, and the harassment and sexual misconduct policy. This is the one we're discussing right now: gender identity, sex, sexual orientation, and pregnancy. Julie, thank you for putting up the discrimination complaint advisors. I knew you'd do it. I'm still grateful. So the other thing we did, we talked about the interim suspensions, incorporate reference to interim suspensions. So that's in the non-discrimination policy on page 10 and the harassment policy on page 6. Limit the role of advisors. So remember, all of these changes that I'm talking about are only going to be made in the Title IX policy, the harassment and sexual misconduct policy. They will not be in the non-discrimination policy. So the non-discrimination policy, so things like race, age, religion, are not going to have these really stringent cross-examination requirements. They don't have advisor requirements. It's going to be like the policy was before. You can use an advisor if you want one. You're absolutely welcome to have one, but you don't have to have one in the non-discrimination one. In the harassment policy, you have to have one. So here's a summary of some of the legally mandated changes I had to make. We added some protected classes. In our non-discrimination policy, we added ethnic origin and genetic information. These are things that are protected for employees. We did not have to extend them to students, but we wanted to, so we used this as an opportunity to put those in. And for harassment, we previously used the word gender, but our use of that word gender was a little outdated. It was specific to the time. When that policy was originally written, people were using the word gender to mean a binary male or female, not like it's used today to identify your gender expression. So I changed that word gender to mean to sex in our updated policy. To mean you're discriminated against based on one of those binaries. And then as a result of the, there was a Supreme Court case on gender identity that came out and provided additional protections for gender identity. So gender nonconforming people or transgender people have additional protections. So the word gender identity is specifically in that policy to identify that we do not allow harassment or discrimination on the basis of gender identity either. So these are improvements. I see those as bonuses. Those are good things that are included. Nothing was taken out in that regard. We did have a definition of sexual harassment in our non-discrimination policy that was set by the federal government. It is so similar to our definition that unless you are a scholar on this and you're reading the case law, you're probably not going to notice a difference going through a hearing, but that is updated. Notice requirements to a respondent before a hearing. We have to provide written notice before someone goes in for their interviews, and there were some updates to those notices as well. Written determination requirements. So when a hearing is decided, if someone goes through a formal hearing, they get a decision letter from the campus judicial board. The contents of that decision letter are now regulated. And what that means is it's going to include additional information such as how the investigation was conducted, what sort of written notice was given to the parties. So those change a little bit as well. Appeals to the provost. So for a very short period of time, any appeals were going to the chief, the COO. I can't even remember what that stands for, but now it's going back to the provost for any appeals. And in investigations, there's going to be additional back and forth between the investigating party and the complaining or reviewing parties. Julie, you're on top of it. Thank you. I knew that was coming up. But so what that means is in an investigation, when parties are moving forward with their complaint, they speak to the investigating officer. The investigating officer takes notes and submits those notes, that write-up, to a hearing board. Now, under the new regulations, those notes are going to be available for both parties to review before it's submitted to the hearing board, and both parties will have the opportunity to write a response to what the other party submitted and have that response go to the hearing panel as well. So it's just additional process to review what the other person has submitted before a hearing and respond in writing. A complaint is now defined. A complaint only means signed and submitted complaints. So what this means is things are a little bit different, because if something does not go through our formal intake process, it's not technically a complaint. So if someone is engaging with me back and forth by email for a while, under the old policy, I had the ability to say, this is their complaint. I'm not going to make them fill out paperwork. We're just going to start moving forward. Now I'm going to have to shepherd them to this process and say, fill this out. I don't see it being too much of a change because it does help guide the formal process that follows after and specifies what students are looking for. But it is a slight difference. If someone thinks speaking to me is their complaint, it's not. A complaint threshold is hit once that formal complaint is filled out. Live hearings must allow for expert witnesses. So what that means is if someone wants to bring in an expert, this is like you see in courtroom TV, the alcohol expert comes in to say, if you drink too much alcohol, then you're intoxicated. Something like that, just something that someone with expertise would be able to testify to. They're able to come in. They don't have to come in. That's not a requirement that we have them. It's just if parties want to put that sort of information in, they have the ability to do so. Hearings can be conducted via video conference. So this is slightly different than under our old policy. We were, figuring things out during COVID at the start, and we did have telephonic hearings at that time. Going forward, they can be live or they can be online if there is video involved. That doesn't mean parties have to see each other, so that remains unchanged. Parties do not have to look at each other. The camera could face away, or one person could cover up a portion of their screen that shows the other person. That's still fine, but it just can't be telephonic only. This one is a big change also. Only relevant evidence is allowed into a hearing, and a hearing panel must make live determinations of relevance. So I'm just going to do a surface level definition of relevance. But what this means is you have to stay really, really on topic, and the hearing panel will not allow the question to be asked if it is not on topic. So for example, if there is a hearing about whether a sexual assault occurred, you can't say, did we go to McDonald's last week? That's not going to be relevant to whether a sexual assault occurred 3 weeks before that. So the hearing panel is going to make a determination about that at the time the question is asked. And if it's not relevant, then it cannot be answered. So a few things stayed the same. We also touched on this on our last list, but I'll just cover them again to make sure we're all on the same page. The responsible employee list, these are the people who have to report, stayed the same. Jurisdiction of Title IX complaints on and off campus stayed the same. So that's the same as under the old policy. The policy applies at the date of the complaint, preponderance of the evidence standard, and 60-day limit with ability to create extensions. All that stayed the same. Other changes to the policy, if you were looking at this very closely, you're going to notice it's organized differently. I think it's organized a little bit better to show where resources are and what parties carry out which portion, just wording and grammatical changes, additional descriptions of resources. So some phone numbers have changed. So for example, the SAAFE office phone number has been updated, things like that, just general housekeeping. But I do want to draw your attention to this last point. There's an addition of the Valparaiso University Office for Civil Rights. So this is an office created to take complaints from the discrimination complaint process. In actuality, these complaints are still coming to me, but what this is meant to do is there was some concerns of where do our discrimination complaints go? This does not make sense. Under the old policy, they all went to the Title IX coordinator, which is me. So in fact, they have been coming to me all along, but I think that there was very legitimate concerns that it's confusing to bring a discrimination complaint to the Title IX coordinator. So we created this office to create clarity. Discrimination complaints go to the Valparaiso Office for Civil Rights. Title IX complaints go to the Title IX coordinator. In actuality, these are the same person. So right now it's me. In the future, it's going to be LaShawn McGee. But in name, it's different to help people make that connection a little bit more clearer. So that website is in the process of being built. I have to get a special permalink so that it's tied to the valpo.edu website. But as soon as I get that permalink, then that website will be up. These policies are available for review on the Title IX website. So even the one that's not Title IX is on the Title IX website. Julie has linked that in the comments, valpo.edu/Title IX. At the very bottom of the page, there's one that says non-discrimination and one that says Title IX. I do see we have one person on the phone. Is that LaShawn? Are you able to talk?
Hi, yes, it's LaShawn. How are you? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You broke up a little bit for me, but I gave an introduction at the beginning and just clarified that my last day is September 11th. You'll be starting September 8th, and we'll be doing overlap train up. I also talked about the difference in scope, that you're going to be doing less than a full-time coordinator would be doing to set that expectation, but that you are available to connect with students. And I also set the expectation that you are not working today. So thank you so much for being here and for joining us. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that?
Yes, absolutely. Uh-oh.
Oh, I hear you now.
I'm sorry. Okay. Yes, I was hoping to be able to join by video, but I don't know what was going on with that. So I'm definitely glad I was able to get the phone connected. And so I'm definitely looking forward to, meeting the leaders that you have on this call. And I know that, in this interim time period, especially with the new regulations and things of that nature, there's a lot of uncertainty. But I am, definitely excited about, assisting Valparaiso and, navigating these waters until a permanent person is put in place. So, absolutely, if you have any questions once I set up, you'll definitely get that email and you can ask me those questions. And it sounds like Janelle has done a great job with doing the foundation and laying the groundwork for, where things currently rely, and we'll just go from there. So do you all have any questions of me?
Hi, LaShawn. This is Caitlin Steinheiser. I'm the current student body president. I don't have any questions for you, but I just wanted to thank you so much for being on the call today, especially since you haven't started in your position yet.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
And with that, my portion of the presentation is also wrapped up. So I'm happy to field any questions that you have on any of these changes.
Hi, I have two. As I had a Title IX hearing last June in 2019. As a result, my rapist was suspended. I'm wondering as far as suspension goes, one, is he ever going to be allowed back on campus? I know the suspension is a minimum of 3 years, or as long as I remain on campus, but what is the university, if you know, what is the university doing to prevent him from coming back if he decides to enroll again and try to finish out his degree?
Yeah, thank you so much for your question and for sharing your experience on this call. Unfortunately, I don't answer questions that affect student records, especially in a public forum, but I'm happy to follow up with you. And in fact, I can jump on another call with you after this, or email with you, whichever you prefer.
I'd be happy to jump on a call after this.
Okay. I'll send you a Google Meet invite right now.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have another question, Jill, or was that both of the questions?
It was also about like student records, so I figured I'd hold off. Thanks, Caitlin.
Okay, cool. No problem. Does anybody else have any other questions for Janelle or LaShawn? All right, I guess we can wrap everything up. Thank you guys so much for coming. I really appreciate that we can have conversations like this and make sure that students are up to date on all new Title IX regulations. Janelle, thank you so much for everything that you've done for Valpo. I was sad to hear that you're leaving today, but LaShawn, I'm really excited to work with you. As most of you know, if you guys ever have any questions, you can email me at senate.president@valpo.edu, and I can take care of anything for you. This forum will also be posted on the Student Senate website, so if you want to look back at it, you can always go there to watch it. And unless anybody has any questions, have a great day. Good to see you guys.
Awesome. Thank you. Nice to talk with everyone and talk with you soon.
Thank you.
Senate. Bye.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.